In this video, I will be discussing the definition as well as your table of contents of your project scope statement. Now, what is a project scope statement? It's a document that outlines your project's objectives, deliverables, and boundaries. It contains the entire scope, which includes your project scope as well as your product scope. It provides a clear understanding of what is included and excluded in your project. It also helps to manage your scope change in order to prevent scope creep. It creates a shared understanding of your project goals between your project team as well as your stakeholders. And it serves as a guide for project planning and execution. And lastly, provides a basis for monitoring and controlling project progress. Now, what is the difference between your project charter and your project scope statement? You can also go to the description box below to watch a detailed video of the project charter. Your project charter is a document that contains high-level project information, while your project scope statement is a document that contains a detailed description of your project scope. Now let's have a look at your table of contents of a project scope statement, starting off with our introduction. Now in this section, it explains why the project is being undertaken and what it aims to achieve. You can also include a background that provides your context and background information about the project, which can also include your relevant history on your project. Then the second section is your project scope description. Now this is a comprehensive description of what the project will deliver. Now let's have a look at an example of building a house. So your project scope description can be, it's a single family residential house. It's going to have 4 bedrooms, boundary walls, 2-car garage. It's going to include the planning, your design, construction, final inspection, as well as your client handover. You can also explain your site preparation, foundation construction, what is needed, structural framework, what is required, etc. Now the third section is our acceptance criteria. Now this is our standards and conditions that must be met for deliverables to be accepted. And again, in our example, that can be our design specification compliance, quality standards, building code compliance, as well as your functional testing, which can include electrical, plumbing, and HVAC functional testing. Then your approval process. Now this is the process by which deliverables will be reviewed and approved. And here you can provide detail on preliminary inspections that needs to be done, final inspection, client walkthrough, as well as your client sign-off. Then in the fourth section, that is our project deliverables. Here we provide a detailed list of all the outputs the project will produce. As an example, you can have your house foundation. Then we also include a description of each deliverable. That's your detailed description of each deliverable, including specifications and our quality standards. And for the house foundation, you might include your foundation concrete strength. Then we've got our project exclusion section. Now it can be explicit exclusions. This is where you clearly state what is not included in the project to manage your stakeholder expectations. An example might be your garden design and landscaping. Then the out of scope items, that can be items or activities that are not part of the project. That can be a swimming pool or home automation in our building and house example. Then we've got our project constraints section. This can be time constraints, any deadline or time limitation that the project must adhere to, budget constraints, that can be financial limitations or budgetary restrictions, as well as resource constraints, that is limitations related to the availability of resources such as our personnel, equipment, and material, and there might be some other constraints that you can also include. Then we've got our project assumptions. That can be key assumptions. That's assumptions made during the project planning. As an example, that can be timely approval of permits and licenses for our building a house example. And then we can also include the impact of assumptions. That is our potential impact, Now that can have a positive impact, again in our example. So if the approval is on time, the project can proceed according to the planned schedule. But then there can also be negative impacts. That is, if the permits and licenses has got a late approval, that can lead to project delay, increased cost on your project, resource allocation issues, and stakeholder dissatisfaction. Then lastly, we can also include a glossary with definitions of key terms used in your project scope statement, as well as acronyms and abbreviations. Now, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, or you can subscribe to my channel for more project management related videos.